Hello everyone. I was about to begin the stream doing something that I don't usually do. I usually complain about how janky streaming software is. Today I was going to praise Twitch because they finally learned how to count. You see, if I tell you that I want a 3-minute ad to run 1 minute after my stream starts, there's no reason why the entire process should take more than 5 minutes. And they fixed it. Seems like they fixed it. Today I started the stream at 8:25, 5 minutes ago. At 8:26 exactly, the ad started, lasted 3 minutes, and then I was able to start my stream at 8:30. Tell me why, though, there's an ad running right now. Another one. There's a second 3-minute ad has hit the stream, according to Twitch. I don't know if it's actually true, if it's just glitching. Somebody on Twitch tell me. It's been a long time since I've had my hair down, for obvious heat-related reasons. It'll last about 2 minutes, so admire it while you can. Look at that. Look at that. It's blowing in my face. It's annoying as hell. Also, hello, Kayal, Snow, and Blurry Squire. Hello, everyone. Sorry if there's an ad on Twitch. I genuinely have no control over that. I don't know what's happening. I'm hoping not, and I'm hoping that, you know, just because you run 3 minutes of ads doesn't mean that everyone sees 3 minutes of ads. I'm hoping that at the very least it's not showing someone 6 minutes of ads. That would be very shitty. Sorry if that's you, in which case you're not actually hearing this. I sure hope not. Hair is almost as long. Nice. Been wanting to have long hair for a while. This is the second summer that I don't feel like cutting it, because that usually was my cutoff point. Summer would hit, and I was like, okay, yeah, nah, just chop that shit off. Now we're good. Now we're good. Mostly. Okay, I'm apparently also going to start each of my streams reviewing coffee, because I got like a sample of like multiple different types of coffee. So, not gonna lie, I'm kind of doing it so I have a recording of how I feel about each of the coffees that I try, so I know which one to buy again. This is decaf. Okay, the coughing has nothing to do with the coffee's taste. It's actually really good. I just don't know how to drink. Apparently, that's not a skill that I possess. The coffee is pretty good. Just went down the wrong way a little bit. Alright, so decaf, good. Again, mostly doing that for myself. Okay. Now, Emacs is in fact done for. I'm tired. How long did I last with that shit? Like, 5 hours total? I cannot stand it. I cannot stand Emacs. It's awful. Oh my god. It has a great philosophy behind it. The way that it's all text-based interface. I love that. It's what I think the terminal should have been. The terminal should have been closer to Emacs, or the terminal should be Emacs. However, the way that it works, it's just genuinely like, why are you doing all that? Why is nothing straightforward in this software? Something that is completely straightforward in literally every other piece of software ever. I'm not talking about text editors or code editors. I'm talking about software. Something that is straightforward in all software is not straightforward on Emacs. Same thing goes for Vim, by the way. :Q. I understand there's a whole meme around not being able to close Vim. Haha. But like, it's not straightforward. Like, it's just complexity for the sake of complexity. That is what I don't like about Emacs also. In that sense, Vim, Emacs both have that issue, in my opinion. But again, started making my own thing yesterday. Did a little bit of off-screen mining, of course. So, what do we have so far? Not a whole lot. To be fair, I was mostly working on like the layout system, because one thing that I really like about Emacs, being able to work with like multiple buffers, it's relatively simple. I say relatively simple because I have to hit Control X and then I have to press 2 or 3, depending on if I want to split the screen vertically or horizontally. Why not arrow keys, which make it very obvious, is the question that I ask myself. So that's what you do in mine. It's that simple. Control arrow key creates a new right arrow creates a new buffer on the right. Control arrow left creates a new buffer on the left. Control up creates a new buffer up. Control down creates a new buffer down. I added buffers before the current one off stream. Then you can cycle between them with Control Tab. By the way, you use Command to edit, so, or meta. So I'm free to use Control arrow keys for splitting the screen. All of it will be customizable, so that's not really a problem, but at least, you know, it makes a little bit of sense. Literally, Control the program, arrow key, left. Create a buffer on the left. Was that so fucking hard, Emacs? Did you have to put up, do I have to enter the fucking Konami code every time I want to switch to a new window? Which is, by the way, called a frame, because a frame is called a window and a window is called a frame. Anyway, you cycle between tabs with Control Tab. I think it works fine now. It was a little buggy yesterday. Seems to work fine. You can also click. Added that. And what else? I made some improvements to the UI library that powers this entire thing. The cursor works a lot better now. No, it doesn't. I forgot a little offset. Okay, I didn't fully. I guess I didn't test it on a second buffer. The cursor is now rendered at the same time that the text is rendered. Whereas before it was kind of hacked together. The UI library, like text is very native to this UI library. Rendering text is very native to it. So it makes sense that rendering the cursor would also be very native. It happens directly in the render loop, which just makes it a lot more straightforward. But it looks like I forgot to add a little offset. So I'm typing into this buffer, but the cursor is in this buffer. So, yeah. Now very nice. Should be easy to fix. So I want to keep working on this a little bit today. The thing is, I technically have 2 code editors, and you can run both of them right now. But the old one, no, you can't. It's configured to run, to compile any .c file except for build.c. So now it detects 2 main functions, because there are 2 main functions. That is unfortunate. But we should be able to fix it. Tell it to just ignore brain.c. And then tell it to recompile the build system, and there we go. What's your problem? Okay, also ignore the tree layout.c. So anyway, about... Ah, right. Come on, what now? What? What are these errors? Shit. Okay. I made a little change earlier today and I kinda didn't test it. My bad, I'll have to fix that real quick. Alright. Ooh, it's hot, but not too hot, I guess. And here, it's scorching hot outside. I think I might be able to get through today, hopefully. I'm not gonna be streaming next week. I wanna take a break. I wanna melt in peace, because I'm still gonna be melting. But at least I'm not gonna be in front of a camera while doing it. I'm not actively gonna be dying on camera, so that's pretty nice. But yeah, I'm taking a break for Friday through Monday, next week. Where's the change that I made? Files. Files, data signatures. It's not here. Wait. Which library are you compiling against? This one. Okay. It's complaining about the fact that there's a 0 here. And technically there is a 0 here. I added a null termination to data signatures, which are used to be 8-byte characters or 8-byte strings to indicate the type of file that something is. These are some of the default ones. Unfortunately, I decided to make the last one null terminated, which technically means this one should be a 0, as it says here, but not in the source file. Also, Z has been incredibly buggy the last 24 hours. I don't know what is happening because I actually turned off updates because it's actively getting worse every update. So I turned off updates, but it's continuing to get worse. And I can't help but immediately point my finger at Z when a file tells me that this is what's there, when in reality it's not. Like what I'm seeing and what I'm being told are two different things here. There it is. Okay. So how were you picking up a change that you hadn't pulled in yet? Do we maybe see a problem with that? Okay, I'm bringing it back to how it was because it wasn't even buggy or anything, so we're good. I'm just gonna add a to-do. Ensure all data signatures are accessed as slices. That way I can explicitly specify that it's 8 bytes maximum and not need to null terminate it. That's fine. I just don't understand how it's possible that I had a compilation error from a change that I made, but that wasn't pulled into the repo yet. That makes no sense. And here I don't think I can blame Z. Here I don't know who's to blame for that, but it makes no sense. Okay. I fixed it. Yes. Okay, so no. It must be using a different version of the library then. It must be using the one that comes with the OS. So that's where I made the change. That's just really By the way, Zed did this really beautiful thing yesterday where I did a commit for one project, but secretly I was actually doing a commit for a different project. And it, like the UI and what was actually happening were completely different. These are the kinds of glitches that make me want to move away from Zed. because I'm committing code without looking at it, and I'm not committing the code that I think I'm looking at. That is a major bug that's been happening for a long, long time in Z. And instead of that bug being fixed, more are coming in. So I'm absolutely annoyed as hell at Z. Yeah, here's that change. Just gonna undo it. Well, no, it probably makes more sense for me to commit it here. And then pull it in here. Okay. Something must be set up weird that it uses that version of the library instead of the one that it should. But I think we're good now. Alright, so can you compile? Yes, it looks like it is now. I think AI heats the earth. Yes, it does. This is the old version of the editor. Now it doesn't have a cursor anymore because I removed the cursor that it used to have. I forgot I added zoom to Windows. So this is a zoomed out window. Except, yeah, when I added it back, I forgot to make it so that it doesn't happen when you're scrolling inside of a window. So, my bad. I'll probably need to... I can remove it actually, hold on. Do I have the other project open? No, I don't. Alright, Emacs, you might be helpful for this. Yep. And there should be an option here for zoom. There isn't an option for zoom. I just added it back without an option. Did I really do that? Is this live or AI? Thank you for your question. I'm not gonna pretend to be an AI. I'm tired. And it's like 50 degrees in here, thanks to AI. God, I forgot where I'm supposed to look, actually. Alright, whatever. I'm not even gonna be using that, so I'm not gonna bother with that. Anyway, there's an old version of the editor. There's a new version of the editor. I'm making the new version of the editor. I hope that still can be understood with our live demo of how to scroll in the old editor, which is half broken. Anyway, and that's how long my hair is gonna stay down. Holy hell. So much nicer like this. Okay. Alright, so I want to work a little bit on the new version of this editor. Fuck's sake. Let me like create a proper compile command for this thing that rebuilds the UI library as well. And yeah, I have a little fix to do in the cursor because I didn't realize the cursor is not using an offset. Pretty sure that's going to be easy to fix. All I have to do is go here and where I actually do the rendering. God, where is that? Where am I actually doing the rendering? Ah, here. Okay. Here I'm drawing the cursor and I should do it at result cursor X. I'm not adding any offset to it, so I just need to add this offset here. Rect point X plus what was already there. And offset on the y-axis, do the same thing. Alright, so now I can type normally in this buffer. I can go create a new one, switch to it, and hello, the cursor is now on the right buffer. Okay, that's good. All right, so yeah, I simplified the way that the cursor works in my system, in my UI library, I mean. Much nicer now. At least from my perspective, it works a lot better. It was genuinely painful to work with before. Now, what I'm not sure about is how to add multi-cursor support to this thing. I do use multi-cursor a lot, so it would be really useful to have as quickly as possible, but I'm not gonna lie, I can't really be bothered adding that. Okay, so part one, I want to work on this editor. Part two, I want to work on my Lisp interpreter because we're getting close to it being functional. But I'm going to start with this. What features should I begin adding to this thing? For example, the ability to open files would be nice. All right, so the easy version for that is I have a function that runs when you open a new buffer, this one actually, that actually completely what's the name of it? Sets up a new completely empty buffer and just writes new buffer as a placeholder. On top of that, I would like to make it, this part I kind of like about Emacs, although there should be also the alternative of just like clicking on a file and it opens. But also like you open this and then you say, hey, open this file in this buffer that I created, right? Makes sense if I maybe show it with Emacs. Right, I am in this buffer, I do Control X, Control F, that does find file, I open a specific file, and there's my config file. So that kind of behavior, I would need to, I would want it to have for opening a file. But another thing that I kind of want to have from Emacs is this thing here at the bottom. It's called a mini buffer in Emacs, so we're not gonna call it that. But it's not a bad name necessarily, but it is, I think, always on the bottom. I don't think you can move it or you can do anything with it. You or plugins. I'm assuming not. I'm not sure. If anyone knows, let me know. But everyone I've seen using Emacs has this at the bottom. And this is helpful for being able to like insert the name of the file that I'm trying to open and all those things. So I want to add that. Also helpful for, running commands for the current buffer that you have selected and whatnot. Essentially being able to have a secondary input to the buffer that you currently have selected. Instead of typing in here, I type in here. So again, with Emacs, it's often clunky. Let's maybe not make it clunky. And now finally caught a stream. I've seen your OS dev videos in the past. Nice, welcome. All right. So I cleaned up a lot of the code that I wrote yesterday. I essentially created this tree layout system that it's a little bit weird, honestly. There is a whole hierarchical layout system that powers my UI library. And then there is another hierarchical UI system that powers that one. It's a little metaprogrammy, but like in the worst way possible because it's all at runtime. It's not really metaprogramming, but the entire point of it is that in a normal program, you write UI in a declarative manner, kind of like this. Begin vertical stack, draw a text field, draw a label, end the vertical stack. And that's cool, but it doesn't really lend itself very well to dynamically building UIs, because pretty much each one of these commands creates an entirely new object. And even if it reused certain objects, it might lose them. Like the way that the UI library manages memory doesn't really matter how it does it, should happen should not be the problem of the program that you're writing, right? So if I decide to change the way that my UI library handles rendering, handles refreshing, that shouldn't be your programs, or even my programs, because I'm writing both things here. That shouldn't be my problem as the programmer of the program and not the UI library. Which means I added this extra layer of node systems, much simplified layout system that allows me to just create buffers pretty much in a very simple way. Right, that means that the code for my entire code editor, between the UI library handling the text rendering and text writing directly, and this tree layout system handling the actual dynamic layout of the view, the entire editor is just 85 lines of code, although it cannot really open any files or do any editing, but that won't add a whole lot. Even the old version that can do that, 200 lines of code, not a whole lot. And number of lines of code doesn't really matter, but the point is very simple code because everything is handled by a different library. Do I also control that? Did I have a point when I started talking about the tree layout, or was I just explaining how it works? I'm hoping it was the second one because I don't have a point anymore. So at least now you understand how this UI system works. But yeah, when I press control, when the current modifier is considered control, right? So I press control or right control, and then I press key up, it creates a new node before the current one on a vertical stack. Down is after the current one on a vertical stack, so on. Control W closes the current one. I'm thinking of also by default mapping that to Command W, because again, I plan on doing most of the editing. Control C, Control V will be actually like Command C, Command V. So I'm copying that from Mac, because Mac uses the meta key quite a lot, whereas it's very underutilized in Windows and Linux. It's a key that pretty much everyone has. So it makes no sense to have it underutilized like that. We have two of them usually. I think every keyboard has two of these keys. I think it makes sense then to separate the behavior of the meta key and the control key. I use control to control the state of the program and command to control the state of what you're doing, right? So you want to move around the buffer like this, right? Per word, you do that with command. You want to close the window, you do that with command. But I'm also allowing you to do that with control because it's controlling the window layout system, also the content. Anyway, all of this is subject to change. It might be stupid. You never know. But I do plan on using the meta key a lot more in both my programs and in the operating system. All right. Adding a, do I want to call it a mini buffer? Do I want to call it an input buffer? Do I want to call it a command buffer? Maybe I want to call it a command buffer. But I am adding an input buffer, which, funnily enough, the OS doesn't have any more compilation errors, I believe, so I can run it safely, yes. This is the terminal for my system. And it prints here, and then it has the input here. Probably the best decision I made in the terminal was to separate the input from the output. I really like that. And it doesn't have to work like that. A program that like controls the entire thing could disable, like could take input directly. But guess what? If I'm making a program that's similar to Emacs, and I say Emacs is what the terminal should have been, doesn't it make sense that this also has terminal functionality and maybe even replaces the default terminal? Yes, it does. At least to me. And if I add a mini buffer, it will have literally the same behavior as this thing. Just need to add a shell to the specific buffer that you're opening. Simple. All right. So yeah, maybe I'm gonna replace the terminal with this. Or maybe I'll keep the terminal, just not keep making changes to it. I don't know. I'm okay with just replacing the terminal with this once this thing becomes powerful enough. Because again, I'm gonna stick to my word. If I say Emacs is what the terminal should have been, and I am making an Emacs alternative, and I'm making a terminal alternative, it makes sense. It would be inconsistent of me not to do that. All right, so I'm gonna have a command buffer. This command buffer will work very similar to the input buffer in the terminal, but I'm not gonna copy any code. This should be a pretty simple buffer to handle. We're going to create this buffer. We're going to give it 256 characters by default, but we're going to allow it to grow. That's literally all it needs to handle a very basic buffer. Then we're going to have to render the buffer always on the bottom of the screen, regardless of how many buffers you have, how your screen is split. I think I need to limit how many splits you can do, because like it can genuinely get ridiculous. There's like 50 buffers in here. But hey, it handles them pretty well. Very happy about that. Though, yeah, there's definitely too many. But no matter how many there are, there should always be at the bottom the input buffer here. The command buffer is what I'm calling it. And it should be accessible. Do I want to use Alt for this? Maybe I'm okay with Emacs's Alt-X key binding. Yeah, all key bindings are default. I want to make it extensible. So you should be able to easily configure your key bindings. But I'm not allowing that right now. So I need to make, and this is the key binding that I'm going to be using. Like I want the default to work in a way that I like, because I'm making this thing for me. So it would make sense that the default is what I like. So I have to choose something good for it. Anyway, the rendering function is actually handled by this tree layout thing, but I do allow a custom rendering function. All right, when you initialize the tree structure, you have a custom draw, which calls this, which is the one that actually does the rendering. Right, so if instead of doing that, I do a brain render or update view, that's going to be the name of my view layout function. Then I call this one internally, but before I do that, I put it in a vertical stack. Should be enough to just copy this shit. Put it in a vertical stack, uno and vertical. And then at the bottom of that, I'm going to create a, can I copy that? No, I can't copy that layout of the terminal because the terminal doesn't use this UI library. So I'm just going to copy this one. Okay, the ID for it is going to be ID 1. And by the way, I allow to specify each of those buffers that shows up in the view is has an ID. Starts at 2. 1 is reserved for this one. All right, so obviously I did these changes yesterday thinking about how I was going to be doing this. Now, there is one thing that I really want my UI library to have. It's just a little bit tedious to add. It's not difficult, it's just tedious. It's the fact that I have one sizing rule. You can make a view fit its content, fill its parent, or be relative to the parent, but not specify which axis. You can only do both the same rule. So it's tedious because I'm going to have to go through all of this layout code, and everywhere that I have specified, okay, if the rule is absolute, if it's, there's also absolute sizing, but I'm not really using that anymore. If the size is relative, right, so calculate for that. I'm going to have to split that into, if the size is relative on the X, do this. If the size is relative on the Y, do that. That's going to be tedious, so I haven't done it. Which means that I'm going to make this fit, probably. Its content. That's probably the best way to make it small. Otherwise, I can make it like relative, but it's not guaranteed to look good. It might be too small or too big. Mostly if it's too small, it's going to be a problem. It's not going to wrap text. It's not supposed to do that. Foreground color, I'm good with white. And its text is going to be the contents of... Actually, I need to create one of these. Command buffer. Command buffer. tf-info. That, okay, that's the correct syntax for that. And then this initializes the command buffer's buffer. And I also have to specify tf-info. I can initialize that like this. Text field info. All right, so it's not going to be multi-line. It is going to have a white cursor. It is going to have its content sent to its own buffer. Set to its own buffer, I mean. It's going to have a placeholder that's just going to be this. And no selected text. All right. That should be all the setup I need for it. I guess we'll see. Better idea, use defaults that no one likes, including you, so that everyone has to read the manual to learn the custom format for writing the config file. What are you talking about? Who would do that? What a stupid idea. Who would do that? Who would make something so cumbersome and difficult to use that you have to read the manual and no one likes it and no one understands it? But also, if a beginner asks a question on a forum, they will be mocked until they read the manual. Who would do that? That's nonsense. That's nonsense. Why? Come on. Be for real. Who would do that? Hi, Evan. I do have to say, Lisp for a config file, smart. All right, so it didn't work like I wanted it to, of course. I don't see the placeholder. Oh, that's a little dumb. I made this one fill up the entire screen. No, wait, hold on. No, that makes sense. Something's weird here with the layout. This layout code is gonna be the death of me. Okay, that's my entire view. By the way, I like this color. I literally just mashed the keyboard and this color came out. It's pretty nice. It looks like my mini buffer, my command buffer, is this entire thing. Like half the screen. So I'm telling it to size fit. So I'm not sure what you're going on about with that, but okay. Not sure what's going on there. A little weird. Just to confirm, background color, I'm gonna set your background color to that and see it. Yep. I expect this to be literally like that size, not like that. Okay, did I break something with the fit? I'm also using size fit for this label here, the current label, and that one works perfectly. So it's a little weird that this one isn't working. Why are you doing that? Also, it doesn't have any content. It's not showing any content. I can't even select it, which makes sense because I'm not allowing to select it. Haven't added that yet. Which means I can't type in it. Okay, I'm gonna add selecting the thing. Which I'm just gonna copy the code for this one. Command buffer mouse. Then I'm going to add a new function here, tree deselect current, so that I can deselect the current buffer, if it wasn't obvious. Now it is, now you get it. Which should be enough to do this, I believe. And maybe focus on 0 to truly disable it. That should be enough. Then focus on our new buffer. Call that new function I created, deselect current. Focus on the mini buffer. And then let the mini buffer also handle the left mouse button if necessary. That's not super correct. I just realized this code. No, it should work. Maybe. Okay, I'm gonna test it. Doc node input mouse input. We're gonna pass it this function. And now when we click on the new mini buffer, it should deselect the other one. Selected the mini buffer. I'm typing in it. And yet it's taking up the entire screen. That's what I don't get. Why are you taking up so much space? It is... Every other node is set to fill, take up as much space as possible. This one is not, and yet it's taking up half the screen. That's really weird. What if I tell it to take up a percentage of the screen? Like 10%? It still takes up most of the screen. Half of the screen. I don't know what's happening here. Shocking. I don't know what's happening. Is this maybe overriding something internally and I'm just being stupid? Come to think of it. Yeah. Okay. This code used to be much more complex and clunky when the cursor of the text field was being handled inside of here. Now it's being handled while rendering, not while setting up the view. So, yeah, there's absolutely no reason. Like, this used to be set to fill because it had a parent view. That was the one that was actually doing the correct sizing. And the text field should take up the entire parent view, which is like a stack between it and the cursor. We don't have that stack anymore, so I needed to remove that rule. Okay, that makes sense. Are you still doing an OS, or is this a different project? It's related. Everything goes back to the OS. So I need a code editor or a text editor for it. Also, I don't like Emacs. I need a new text, and I don't like Zed anymore, so I need a new text editor here as well. So a little bit two birds, one stone. Also, the Lisp interpreter part is going to help for both the text editor and the scripting language for the OS. So relates to it, even though it's technically separate right now, it will tie back to it. Very soon, pretty much once the Lisp interpreter is ready and once this thing is able to edit text decently, which let's try to make that happen today. All right, so I can go back to making this size fit. Though, again, it's still not the right rule. It should be take up as much space as possible on one axis and then fixed size on vertical axis. But for now, we're going to go with fit. You're using a frame buffer? You don't have an ncurses equivalent? Frame buffer for what? No, the problem is the cursor is empty, so now it's taking up 0 space. Oh, for text rendering. So, yeah. No, why should I use ncurses specifically for text rendering? It's not related to that. This UI library can handle text pretty well as, you know, UI elements. So I'm good with that. Made my temperature monitor battery powered. Nice. I have to say I would not survive having a temperature monitor. I would die if I constantly knew the current temperature. Case in point, 38 or 39, let's see. 35! It's a chilly one today, holy fuck. Aren't you watching Spain and Portugal right now? You're a nerd. Can't you tell I'm watching it? Yeah, I am. Yeah. No, actually, he's watching, he's telling me what's going on. Anyway, we might be eliminated today, or we might win the World Cup, or Trump might make a little call. That's a thing that happens now, by the way. Hold on. Did I just act surprised that FIFA and Trump are corrupt? Do I have memory loss? Genuinely. Anyway. I feel like the UI library should, if it has a placeholder, which, by the way, the placeholder is not showing. But if it has a placeholder, it should fit to the size of the placeholder if it doesn't have a text to render. So that's a shortcoming on my end. But either way, we're going to make this one percentage base for now, just so we can move on. If I'm not going to be streaming next week, I have a lot of time to do improvements. Let's make it 0.5 though. So 5%. That seems like a good enough size for what I currently have. Okay, so I can type in it. What I don't understand is where my placeholder is. That's a little weird. So when I set up one of these buffers, I have a placeholder called... Am I not doing it right? I'm not doing it right. I'm not sending in a string slice. Though it's still not wrong. Okay. Why did it not appear at first? It's not there. I click, enters. Weird. But okay, it works. Seems good enough. Would like to try my hand at simple immediate mode UI. Yeah, actually, both are nice. This one is not immediate mode, but you pretty much have to do the same thing. It's just a matter of when you do the calculations for it. I have to say, even though immediate mode is a lot easier to write, and makes a lot more sense in some cases, retain mode UI is nice for complex layouts that are always going to be the same. Immediate mode was the nice one to write. Okay, so immediate mode is the UI where every frame you tell it everything that it needs to render. Every frame you render the UI. So I do have immediate mode UI in the OS, for example. The first version of Uno is immediate mode. Right, so that's being used by the OS. It's also in shared UI Uno. This one. A lot of the same rules that the other one has. Nice to see that I have some deadline code that I never follow. I should not set deadlines in to-dos. That's, come to think of it, kind of a ridiculous thing. Let's see, who's using this UI? The launcher, the app launcher. This is probably the worst example of it. Who else is using this UI? Nowadays, not a lot of people. Just the launcher. But the launcher is kind of optimized to only re-render when something changes on the screen. And not even clear the screen if it doesn't need to re-render. Essentially, immediate mode UI. Every time you clear the screen, you render the entire thing. So every single time that every frame or every refresh, again, it doesn't work like that in the launcher, but every frame in immediate mode UI, you call this entire code, which is the rendering. It is kind of declarative too. I copied this from Clay, the UI library Clay. This library is immediate mode and declarative. It can be both, but it's just using macros. This is not it. What the fuck is this? This is it. You see, like, just a bunch of macros to make it declarative. If you have another language that allows you to do more declarative stuff, you can have a declarative UI. But yeah, it's essentially just saying like, hey, draw something. It's a rectangle. Inside of that rectangle is a label. Inside of that label is another label. Well, it's not inside, they're on the same level, but yeah. That is a immediate mode UI. It just means that all of this gets called every single frame. Whereas retained mode UI means this, that is again, very similar thing. Vertical, stack, draw the buffers, draw the custom buffer, then end the vertical stack. Again, can be kind of declarative. I also made macros for this. I'm not using them right now, but here actually makes sense to use those macros. What the hell? I can make it kind of look declarative by doing this. What are you complaining about? Yeah. C macros are not exactly the best language out there. No. Alright, so it kind of looks declarative as well. And info was not specified, wasn't it? Well, this one. Clang, you're being a clanger. Shut the fuck up. Thank you. Yeah, again, I made some very simple declarative kind of syntax, but all of it runs inside of a function. Whenever the UI library needs to refresh, which I do through a command, uno refresh, which is called internally by tree refresh. Again, I have a wrapper around it for being able to modify it dynamically. Let's face it, immediate mode UI would probably be a lot easier to do for dynamically changing the UI. So that maybe would have been nicer to do in immediate mode, because then this code would get called every time and I can just handle it. No, actually it doesn't really change yeah, it doesn't really change anything. Never mind. But yeah, this only gets called when there's a refresh. So even though there's, you know, constant refreshing of the screen happening, there's nothing changing on the screen. The UI library doesn't have to refresh, meaning that function never gets called again. And even if I add like, I don't know, blinking to the cursor, which is very, very similar color to this, so you can't really see it, but there's a cursor there. If I added blinking to it, that's a rendering thing. It doesn't modify the layout. So long as the layout doesn't change, this function doesn't get called. It doesn't re-render the entire thing. It just, again, once it has already calculated all the layouts, once it has already calculated all the sizes, all the positions, it keeps all that information and just sends that to the renderer. Whereas the UI library calculates all those things every frame when it's immediate. And the immediate library calculates all those things every frame. I used to like immediate mode more. I am really starting to like retained mode a lot more now. Simply because it feels more optimized. It keeps track of what the view looks like. I don't have to keep track of that. It keeps track of that. Although I wrote it. So yeah, I do have to keep track of it, but like not in every program I write. Just the library keeps track of that. I tell it, this is the view. It's like, okay, this is the layout of your view. This is the size of your view. This is the position of every element in your view. I'm going to keep track of that. And that's it. Every frame I'm going to send, you know, the rendered calculated sizes or the information of the calculated sizes to the renderer to draw the view, but you don't have to worry about doing the layout every time. One place where, for example, it can be a lot easier to do immediate mode UI is if you have any kind of animation, because then every frame you just update a value. Like, okay, this is 1 this one time, then it's 2, then it's 3, then it's 4, then it's 5. This is an index, so you wouldn't change it like that, but yeah. You have that. Can you say my name? I'm not Beyonce, so no. Hello, Dulce. If you said hello, I probably would have, but it's suspicious. It's a suspicious question to ask. Okay, there is a little glitch in my little mini buffer command buffer, which is that the placeholder only appears once I click on it the first time. Then it stays there. It's really weird. Then it works perfectly fine, just not the first time? Am I maybe... Oh yeah, okay. I see the problem. I am initializing it after I create... No, I'm creating it after I initialize the view, which means when I first render the view... See this, again. Declare... retained mode UI. The view got calculated once. Then I did all this setup. After calculating the view. When I rendered the view, there was no placeholder, so my view was empty. When I triggered an update of the UI system, it actually picked up this thing, and that's where the placeholder appeared. Now, the placeholder appears immediately. I'm glad, because otherwise that would have been very embarrassing for me. All right. Now, we're going to have a single hard-coded command for this editor. It is going to be opening a file into the current buffer. It's not going to be much of a command. I just type the name of the file, the path of the file, and that is it. The reason I'm limiting it to just one command, and it's kind of a cumbersome one because you have to type the entire path every time for the file that you want to open. The reason for that is that this is a command buffer. It should take commands. And well, now that we have an Emacs expert in the chat, I'm going to make an assumption of how the Emacs buffer works. But essentially, the way that if I had to program this thing, which I do, I am programming this thing. And if I had to program this thing, I would make it so that everything you put in here is a command. However, doing certain keystrokes, certain shortcuts, automatically triggers certain commands, which take as input a certain value once you run the command. Which means when I do Control X, Control F, hold on, I'm already in the mini buffer. Control X, Control F, which is find file and open the file in the current buffer once it finds it. This is already automatically running a command for me. Like that combination of keys is running a command, which the first thing that that command does is ask me for input for what file to do. And the second thing that it does is open that file into the current buffer. So it's a proper command. It's a proper behavior. Is that actually how it works? I don't know, but it is how it's going to work in my thing. That way, it's going to be much more customizable. You don't like the way that my program opens files? No problem, make your own. It's a very small thing to complain about, but hey, no problem, make your own. So for the time being, we are going to just hardcode a single command. We type in a path and it opens a file located at that path. Everything after that is going to be based off of my Lisp interpreter. So I'm going to switch to that after this works. Okay. That is my plan. Now, a little bit of maintenance before I get to that is else if the current modifier is the left alt or the current modifier is the right alt, we're gonna have a bunch of behaviors for when you press alt, although right now I only need one, but I'm still gonna put this in a switch. Okay. I'm stealing this from Emacs, X. So alt X is gonna open the mini buffer. It's called the command buffer. So that what that is going to do. Didn't realize that this is not in a switch, so just okay, clean that up. Whoop, there we go. Then open the command buffer, run that, and it will automatically refresh. Refresh. I just realized it's refreshing twice. So it's refreshing when I press a key and when I unpress a key, which is like quite a lot. So let's not do that. Instead, let's create this command buffer thing. Cool, it works. Okay, I can press Alt X now. That is convenient. What happens if I press it twice? It complains. You would think it would go back to the original buffer, right? Wouldn't that make sense? Wouldn't that be reasonable? Emacs. Well, guess what? That's how it's gonna work in my editor. That was a very old instance of it. Why are these open? Who's opening these? Why are they staying open? The terminal that launched them closed already. So how are they still open? How are you doing that? Anyway, we are going to store the previous buffer We're going to rename this function to toggle. Well, no. I'm going to make a new one called toggle command buffer. So when you open the command buffer, you're going to see which element is currently open. You're going to save it in the previous buffer, and then you're going to focus the command buffer. And then, if the previous buffer is bigger than 1, actually, that means we're currently in the mini buffer. We're just going to focus on that. So how do you do that? Tree select node by ID, previous buffer. Otherwise, you open the command buffer. Cool. This function does not return the ID of the current buffer, so it needs to do that. I need to update its signature to also do that. And that should be it. Although maybe I'm going to create a type def enum just to clean things up a little bit. Custom buffers. Command buffer ID. Custom buffer IDs. Which is going to start with invalid ID. So 0 is going to be invalid. 1 is going to be the buffer of the command buffer. And then here we're going to put custom buffers count. Any other hard-coded buffers that I add, or any other hard-coded like UI elements that I add that have their own custom fixed ID will go here. The ID will be auto-calculated by this thing. And then the UI system will be allowed to use any ID after that. At least I don't have to hard code 1 and 0 everywhere. So if it's bigger or equal than this number, that means we have a previous buffer. We have to reselect that. We want to select the current buffer, the command buffer, I mean. We select it with the command buffer ID. And previous buffer, we don't have to default to -1. We can default to invalid ID. Anywhere else? Yes, here. This is the command buffer. We're going to hard code its, instead of hard coding the number, we're going to give it the proper ID. All right, and you no longer open the command buffer, you toggle the command buffer. All right, so let's see. I click on the command buffer and then I press X. I'm back in this buffer. I didn't do it. Hold on. Forgot a little thing. You have to also Uno focus the damn thing. Which, hold on, that's stupid. This should handle it. Okay. Now, I click on it. I'm currently in the command buffer. I press Alt X. I'm back in this buffer. I press Alt X. I am not resetting. I'm not resetting the previous buffer back to an invalid ID. So it will always be valid. All right, click this buffer, toggle, not in this buffer anymore. What the hell happened? No, wait, what did happen? Alt X is not working anymore. It worked once and then it stopped working. What? Is it because of this? I'm just resetting the previous buffer after I'm done. What's the problem with that? Switch to it? No, wait. Okay, I'm speechless. What I just did worked once and then it stopped working? Am I... Did I read that correctly? Was that... Hmm. I'm very confused by that. No, that is very confusing. Um, Let me put back the Uno focusing on the previous buffer here. All right. I'm typing in this buffer. I click on this one. I'm typing in this one. I press X. I'm typing in this one. Stops working. Okay, stops working because of this. Because I'm never resetting what the previous buffer was to an invalid ID, so I never open the command buffer again. All right. Is the tree not being selected? Is that the problem? That's very weird. It's an incredibly weird thing. I mean, I'm pretty sure this is... Well, the only way is this is not being called. Somehow. But, okay, this works. I'm gonna keep it like that. Alright. Will it be a terminal or graphical editor? Shit. It might be a terminal. It's gonna do what I wanted Emacs to do. Which it does. Just, you know, clunky as shit. So, hopefully, you don't have to read a manual to use a fucking text editor. Okay. Once again, the only thing that you can do inside of the command buffer wait, when I click on a different editor, yeah, I'm gonna move some stuff out of here. Because when I click, well, right now it's not gonna compile, but when I click on this buffer, I'm never telling my code editor that I'm done using the other buffer. So, need to do that. All right, so I'm gonna move the logic for like its mouse here. Which is really just doc node input mouse, set it to this function, and then get rid of that call here. All right. All right, so when you select this, if we're in the command buffer, we're going to close the command buffer using this as the next buffer after it. I need to forward a clear out function. Let's just see. Oh well. All right, so this and this become new buff. This stays the same because it needs to be reset. Close command buffer using the previous buffer. And the way to do that is no, maybe I don't need this condition. All right, let me see. So I'm here. Now I'm here. Now I'm here. Now I switch or I toggle. Doesn't work. Oh, I'm not actually setting this. Forgot about that. In command true, in command false. Maybe. I don't think that was supposed to mess with anything, but whatever. Well, it does work now. Nope, it doesn't work anymore. It does work again. Okay. Ah, okay. This is the reason. I was toggling twice because of the event type. So now all the events will happen on press. Much simpler logic. Won't have this happen again. That was the reason everything was being so inconsistent. Did it crash? Okay, it crashed. Not sure why. Because Linux won't tell me why it crashed. This will, though. That's not very helpful. Tree the select current. Well, if there is no current, then there's not much to deselect. Is there now? Okay, I think that's fixed. Cool. Final thing then. I am keeping track of which buffer is currently open. And I'm keeping track of well, and I have a command buffer. So again, I type into the command a path and it tries to open a file into that buffer. That is the plan. Okay, so we're gonna do a little bit of a void handle command. I'm not sure what the signature of this thing is gonna look like. I do know that it's a boolean, but I don't remember what it's gonna look like. The keyboard input for the command buffer is gonna go to command buffer kbd. I'm gonna copy its signature from here. If I only remember where. This is mouse. This is copy. This is text field. My god, come on. Oh, it was called input. That's why I couldn't find it. Okay. Command buffer mouse and command buffer kbd. And you're just going to check for one thing. If the event type is equal to press and the event key is key enter, then this is where we're going to execute our command. And we're going to return true. Otherwise, we're going to defer to the UI system to handle it. Okay, so the other function I created, the handle command, that can go, I think. Well, no, I can keep it. I can keep it. Where it is going to take the command buffer turn that into a slice, buffer to slice from buffer, slice from buffer. And here we want to open file, whatever this says. It's not going to be an actual command, it's just going to be the path of the file, because I can't crashes. And I need an entirely different application to know why. Ah, Linux, please change. Uno dispatch keyboard crashes. Ah, wait, I'm calling the wrong function. It's Uno text field input that I want to call. I want to call the original function that I'm overriding, essentially. This one. Okay, open file CBA. That's good. All right, so now we can just add the opening the file really quickly, which just means finding the buffer to write it into, probably the most complex part. First off, we have to have a buffer to write into. We have the previous buffer. So if the previous buffer is less or equal, no, is less than custom buffers count, this is why this thing is very helpful. I right now only have one extra buffer that acts different than the other ones. That's the command buffer. But if I have more, this variable will be updated every time that I add a new ID here. This value will change. That makes it very easy for me to Then I'm trying to go back to where I was. This editor is becoming more useless every time, I swear to God. It's going to update that ID, so it's always going to point to what I want it to point to. Okay? Here. We're going to find the correct the correct tree element with this. Oh, that just gives me an integer. I mean a boolean. Oh, no, wait, this is select. I want tree find by ID, starting at the root with the ID of the previous buffer. I'm kind of trying to keep this having a somewhat neat interface, this whole tree system, so requires me to add a lot of boilerplate. It's not great. but I want to do it like that. All right, tree find. So find the previous buffer, get its tree node. That node is going to have a context. That context is going to be a buffer context. And that buffer context is going to have access to the buffer, which we will override with a new buffer. And we can also destroy the previous buffer to clean up memory. Destroy the previous buffer with the b context buffer and give it a new buffer where it's, well, first off, we're gonna have to open the file. Which is provided by this cmd.data. Its size, we're gonna need to keep track of it. All right. What is your problem? Oh. All right, so the buffer is already opened and created in F. Then the size of the buffer is size. The limit of the buffer, you're opening a file. Should I maybe make the default allocate? Well, no, actually, I can't do that. I was gonna say, should I make it so that you have a little bit of extra space that you can edit into? But setting the limit does not do another allocation, so it wouldn't really make sense. The size of the file is currently all the data that is allocated for it. If you want to type more, it will be reallocated. But I will allow that with buffer can grow. And that is all I need to do. Z, I'm just using Z to get rid of Z. And Emacs, both of them. And there's no text editor right now that I like. Let's put it that way. Z I used to like, but it's getting so glitchy. All right, let me see now. Can I open? This thing does not handle shifts. That's sad. I haven't added pressing shift for modifier key. So I can't type the tilde, which means I need to have my entire path to specify the file that I want to open. But hopefully you can resolve the path and boom, it opened itself. It opened itself. That's cool. It's very convenient. Of course, another thing that it needs to do is it needs to keep track of which file you have open. Right? That's kind of an important thing to do. And should it do that with file descriptors? Now the answer is yes. It should open the file, read from it, put it in the buffer, keep the file open. However, I don't really handle file descriptors in Linux. I only do it in my own system. So in my own system, this is going to be easy and nice and neat to do. Here, not so much. So we're just going to keep the path to the file. That way I can add, what is the name of it? I can add saving the document relatively easy. Having a hard time navigating the code base. Like, that's a feature that I'm gonna add to my editor. Find the cursor. Is that a thing that any editor has? Any text editor has? Find the cursor. It's like going up. Now I need to find where I am right now. It's not super easy. Is that a thing that any editor has that I don't know about? Anyway, the cursor is in the wrong place, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, I open a file. Now, I'm doing kind of something a little bit dangerous here, which is that I'm reading the full file with a string, but I'm using a string slice here. Luckily, though, the buffer contexts. Let me do that down here. Let me create a string path, string from slice cmd. That's going to create a null terminated string from this slice. So I can use that directly. Then I can tell my context here, the path is the path. And to do, check for unsaved changes in the path. Because that's another thing that we're going to need to have. Hello, Peter. I love how you have officially stopped saying hi the way that you used to, because YouTube chat translates messages for some reason. Okay, where's all the code that I just wrote? It was... Am I tripping? Where is all the code that I just wrote? Hello? Why am I in another unsaved file? Okay, please tell me somebody caught what the fuck just happened. Alright, hold on. We're 1 hour 38 minutes into the stream. I'm going to go back to this moment and see what the fuck just happened after the stream, because genuinely, what was that? I was working on this function, and all of a sudden I found myself in this version of my file in which the function hasn't been written yet, has a compilation error because I switched to another one to quickly fix this issue. It didn't override my code, but it opened a new, older version of my file and switched me to it, and I don't recall doing that? Okay, again, I just want to understand, am I being gaslit? Or is Zed actively breaking before my very eyes live on stream recorded? I am genuinely lost as to what happened here. You know what? Hold on. Recall doing? Can I? Does it not tell me like timestamps properly? No, it doesn't have timestamps properly, so I can't go to the exact moment that this happened, but I am genuinely at a loss for words for what happened here. Here I'm writing the thing. We can set it to like very fast speed. How many seconds ago is this? How many? 4 minutes ago. That's a bit too much. Here I'm in the correct file. I'm writing stuff to it. I say change. I'm actively tripping. I have no idea what's happening. I am losing it here. Um, I'm I'm writing a to-do. I genuinely need to understand what is happening. Okay, I see what happened. I clicked on the definition of this thing, which took me to a different version of the file. Which, by the way, is not visible on the actual stream. A different version of the file. Which is not saved and does not actually have the variable that I'm looking for because it didn't exist at this moment in time. Well, I'm glad I solved that mystery. But I am right that Z is actively breaking before my eyes. Oh my god. This thing, I find new bugs every minute. It's amazing how I used to like it. And then I am genuinely finding new bugs every second I use this damn thing. How did I find myself in a version of the file that I was not working with that doesn't even contain the variable in question? Now it won't happen. It happened again. Oh my god, you idiot. You idiot code editor. Oh my god. This whole project is symlinked. So it's going to the original file. And it just so happened to have a version of the original file open that was unsaved. Probably from the last time I did that. That is ridiculous. I don't know if Zed is to blame for this, or like the file system, or like Linus Torvalds, or like Claude. I'm gonna blame Claude. Yeah, Claude's to blame for everything. Fuck it. It's 40 degrees in here because of Claude. That is actually so... Holy fuck. That was insane. Okay. I've never seen a code editor break before my very eyes like this. With updates turned off. It's normal for software to like have more and more bugs as you update it, especially when it's vibe coded. But I've never had it happen with updates turned off where it just breaks in real time in front of you. So this is the first time this has happened to me. I'm very new to this whole thing. I'm very new to a vibe-coded slop. Is this a good beginner vibe-coder slop? Vibe-coded slop, I mean, Zed? Or is there anything better for beginners? Facebook maybe? Instagram? WhatsApp? By the way, WhatsApp didn't deliver a message for an entire 24 hours for me. That was great. A little bit Twitter. What's a good beginner vibe-coded slop software to complain about? Windows, I would say, maybe. Alright, so despite Zed's best efforts, I'm actually so pissed off that my code editor cannot handle keeping the same file open. This is basic file handling functionality. If a code editor cannot handle something so basic, how can I rely on it? This is genuinely concerning. And yet, they are going to continue vibe coding to the point that there's probably been an update in the last hour to this thing, which just adds more slop. Well, look at that. There's a commit 22 minutes ago. Another one 4 hours ago, another 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 5 hours ago, 6 hours ago, 7 hours ago, 8 hours ago, blah, 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 blah. All of these commits in 24 hours. And here I am, watching it break in front of me in real time. Never use Z. I don't understand what the appeal is. Look, it's made in Rust instead of VS Code, which is a comparable editor. It's like, of course, you have like your Emacs, NeoVims. They're completely different philosophies. I like the Emacs philosophy, which is what I'm copying for this code editor that I'm making. Z doesn't follow it. I like the ease of use of Z and VS Code. And it's made in Rust, not JavaScript, so it's a lot faster. However, this is what happens when you vibe code. You cannot, even if you ignore like what I've said about the AI writing slop to the point that it overwhelms its own systems, and then the slop starts, you know, overflowing in your program. Even if you ignore that, you cannot possibly believe that every single thing you add can be good. That's true for like handwritten software, and it's true for automatically written software, right? You cannot ensure that all of it will be good. The problem is when you push constant, unending avalanches of updates, there's a very high chance that some of them, handwritten or not, will not be good. There's a very high chance that a new update will break an old update. That a feature that you haven't worked on in a while may break with something that you added recently. I run into this constantly with my operating system, with my compiler, with literally every piece of software I have written, from the bigger to the smallest one. Unless it's like 5 lines of code, this can very often happen. Unit tests can mitigate that. But let's face it, test coverage does not guarantee that you will have no bugs. And 100% test coverage is hard to achieve. And just because all your tests pass doesn't mean that your software doesn't have bugs. And also those are unit tests. There's also integration tests, which are a lot less used, of how components interact with each other. When you push software at this speed, you cannot guarantee that the software is going to be good. So what is the appeal to doing that in the first place? Ignoring the fact that I don't believe that LLMs are capable of doing this at any speed, between what I'm being told LLMs can do and what I've seen LLMs do and what I've, like personally witnessed, vast difference. It's all marketing, right? But ignoring that part, what is the point of pushing update after update after update? You cannot guarantee that those updates are going to be good. And all this does is make your software unreliable, which, hey, I wanted to make a code editor. I started making a code editor. My main point for making a code editor was I need something to use inside of my operating system because it doesn't support Z or any other one. Now, that was not enough of an excuse for me to want to work on it, to be honest. So I worked on it a bit, and then, now I have the reason of every other code editor fucking sucks. The reliable ones at this point are NeoVim, Emacs. Micro seems pretty reliable, I have to say. They follow philosophies that I don't like in terms of their usability. Micro is terminal based. I don't love that part, but it is easy to use. Proving to NeoVim, by the way, that you can have it both ways. And to Emacs that you can have it both ways. I'm trying to make a similar thing when it comes to Emacs. Same philosophy, but easy to use. However, VS Code and Z are becoming unreliable. To the point that I click on a file, and I am on a variable that is literally inside of the same function that I'm currently in, okay? I click on this variable, which is declared a few lines of code above it. And I am no longer guaranteed that I'm in the same file anymore. Which, thing is, if I make a change in here, and then I switch back to the other file, and I do this again, now I have It couldn't even jump to the correct thing, by the way. Failed to do that. It jumped to wherever it felt like. Anyway, if it does manage to jump where I was, now I have two inconsistent states of my file without realizing that I'm in two versions of the same file. Because it's a ridiculous thing. I didn't open two versions of the same file. Why do I have two versions of the same file? This is not a question that I should ask myself. In a reliable code editor, in a reliable piece of software, it doesn't matter if I'm working with like text files or working with anything, this shouldn't happen. And you can tell how easy it would be for this to break something that I'm doing, right? Like, I hope that part is understandable. Because if I make a change in here, and I don't realize that I'm working on a different file when I make a change in here, if I save this, and I save this, what do you mean I'm overwriting? Should I overwrite? Should I not overwrite? Will I lose the changes that I made? Will I lose these changes? What changes are we talking about? I have no idea. So this is the issue with this happening. Makes no sense. This should not happen. If your software had been coded with a minimum of a standard and you had prioritized maintaining reliability over pushing update after update after update. Because I can guarantee you, Zed has probably pushed like 5 updates in the past 5 days. What's the point of that? Why do we need that if they're just adding bugs? And work trees. They added work trees to Zed now. Who uses work trees? Who knows what work trees are? Very few people. But you have work trees now. 5 days ago. I'm a little bit surprised. Then again, it's a 0.9 release. Alright, so maybe I was wrong. I see I make some shoddy tests too. That's a different story. Like, again, I'm leaving aside that part. Even if you have good tests, you cannot possibly cover every possibility of your program and how it's going to be used. Zed, again, I turned off auto update because it genuinely broke every time it updated, and it updated at least every day, sometimes twice a day. Seems like lately they've slowed down their updates, but genuinely, what is the point? AI people know what work trees are? Is that a thing that AI uses? For parallel agents. Ah. I was wondering why they would add a feature that is so niche. Turns out it's not niche, it's just used by people who don't know how to code. Great. The updates are annoying at this point. The updates are breaking it. But again, I'm finding new bugs live on stream. Over the past 24 hours, I have watched this piece of software unravel before my very eyes and those of everyone watching. It's amazing. I could open an issue on GitHub, but I would be opening issue after issue after issue, which would be picked up by an AI. It would take shitty code as input, an issue as input, and produce shitty code as output, which is maybe gonna fix the issue and introduce 10 new ones. I don't believe vibecoded code is reliable, and I don't believe that it's maintainable. Having read that code, it is not maintainable. So creating an issue would just contribute to the slop. Creating an issue is just allowing 10 other people to create 10 new issues from the bugs that my fix introduces. Not really worth it. Also, I'm making my own thing. Why would I do that? But my own thing cannot save files right now, so I'm gonna add that. At least my file, when you open the file, it opens that file and keeps track of the path that it used to open that file, and that is how it interacts with your file. This thing cannot happen in here. I hope so anyway. No, right now nothing can happen. Vibecoded program opens a lot of errors. Just the structure of vibecoded code. You know, it adds so much bullshit. It adds so many safety checks that are not gonna actually do anything. Like it writes safer code than Rust would, if Rust were an LLM. And it isn't really doing anything. It's just adding noise to your code to the point that you're gonna look at a vibe-coded code base and go, I'm not touching that. Claude, fix the bug. And what's Claude gonna do? Take in all of that noise as input, have to filter out that to see what actually needs to be done, and as a result, produce more noise. It's not a sustainable way of coding. You can use it for a prototype, sure. Let's face it, I've used AI for prototyping. It's not really telling you anything, mind you. It's just giving you the illusion of a prototype. It cannot even prototype properly. Right, so even then, meh. Can use it to make some garbage. Well, you got a point. You got a point. Microsoft does need something to do at the end of the day. I guess GNU does too, but I don't think they're vibe coding. But neither of those companies needed help making garbage. GNU's not a company. GNU, is it like Linux Foundation? GNU project. Not Linux Foundation then. Incorporated to some extent. I know the Linux Foundation is, even though it's a non-profit. No references to the Linux Foundation, so I guess it's just a GNU project. Funding. May tell me something. Proceeds from Free Software Foundation. So it's a different foundation. Free Software Foundation. The reason we are better than AI is we have millions of neural networks and logic. Is that true? Don't tell them that, because they're just gonna throw in more agents. Don't say that. You're gonna they're gonna add more agents. We're gonna have more agents to the whole thing. No, don't say that. Don't say more neural networks ever again. Those are words that are prohibited in our modern vocabulary because the AI bros are just gonna throw more agents into the mix, and that's the last thing we want. Okay. Let me see. I do have a way of getting the current buffer, which is this one. Alright, so that's GNU is, yeah, the Free Software Foundation. Surprised that it's separate from Linux. Might as well have done their own. Well, yeah, okay. One of them is just very, very shoddy work. Look, I see the usefulness of GNU software. To a certain extent. Because I've used GDB. Okay? And I cannot tell you the last time I used GDB successfully, where it actually gave me the result that I was looking for, helped me actually debug something. It should really be called the GNU bugger, because it just bugs your code more. It's not great. And of course, what's the acronym that we can, wait, hold on. It's not called an acronym, it's called something else. It says it here in the Wikipedia. A recursive acronym. It's called a recursive acronym. GNU stands for, GNU is not usable. Right, so not particularly a fan of their software, but as a philosophy, I think it's useful. And again, I like the philosophy of Emacs. I'm copying it, literally, but come on. Wait, I just realized there was no ad break after 1 hour of streaming, so I think actually Twitch ran 2 ads back to back, and then it saved me 1 ad. Because like at the beginning of the stream, I ran a 3-minute ad, and then it ran another 3-minute ad immediately after. Like, I don't know what happened there. Let me go strong AI era, but not AGI. How can you possibly build a generalized intelligence when the people building it are this fucking stupid? That alone tells me we're not gonna get AGI. There's no intelligence building the damn thing. Where's the intelligence gonna come from? I do mean that with full offense of people working at AI companies. Okay, alright, full file. Look how easy this is gonna be without any issues, any kind of symlink bullshit, that whatever the fuck my dude Zed was doing there. We're just gonna write into the path that we saved the buffer with the buffer size. That's all it takes. Yeah, I'm gonna respond to that message once the ad break is over. And this is going to need to lead to a null pointer though. Well, first off, it's not hooked up to anything, so I can prevent the null pointer by just null checking this thing. Right, but I didn't hook up this function to anything. This is where command comes in. I don't feel like typing the whole thing, so. Key left and right meta. Switch on pressing S, and it is going to save the current buffer. Also, pressing W is going to close the current buffer. We're not going to save the current buffer when we close. There should be a whole, like, you have unsaved changes. Do you want to save those changes? Can't be bothered with that right now. So if you don't immediately save, you will lose your buffer. Okay, so it doesn't do anything when I don't have a file open. However, I do have to type the entire thing. So home d braincode brain.c. There's my file. My cursor is at the very end of it, I believe. Yeah. Hello? Command S. Didn't save. That sucks. AFK go. AFK gone. Nice to meet you. They'll be back again. See you, side. All right, let me debug this during the 18 seconds that I have of ad break. This whole priv buff. Okay. I don't need to do this. Hold on. Custom buffers count. There. Automatically, the previous buffer, which is really more of a current buffer, is going to be set to the ID of the first buffer that's going to be created, even though it hasn't been created yet. But I do need to know why my file is not being saved, because that's the last thing I need to add for this to be a proper text editor. All right, let's see. I open a file. There's my file. I need to do a little bit of scrolling work and whatnot, but there I am, typing hello, moving down to the next line and pressing Command S, which does nothing. If the current modifier is left meta or right meta, isn't it? Linux, you piece of shit. I can't use the meta key inside my program because Linux is hijacking it? Hello? Are we serious with that? There is a super underutilized key in Linux. And when I try to use it, this fuck-ass system takes over it and doesn't let me use it. Oh my god. That... No, hold on, I think I'm just being stupid. Hold on, sorry Linux. Not sorry Linux, I was right. You've got to be joking. You've got to be joking, you piece of shit. An entire key with one functionality that I'm not allowed to use in my own programs. That is ridiculous. Does this one work? Why is this even open? Like it shouldn't be running anymore. VirtualBox, yeah, but this is not. This is X11. This is native Linux. Okay. No, even the right key. Oh my god. You joke of a fucking operating system. Are you serious? I'm actually not allowed to use. Again, with key remapping, I can just make different mappings for Linux, but god. I have to use Control S like a caveman. Because I can't use Command X. Like a normal human being. Like a civilized human being. That is annoying. What the fuck, Linux? I'm so pissed that I forgot to actually make a change to the file. Didn't add it. It worked the first time. It stopped working after that. That is so disappointing. What the actual fuck? This is not macOS, so why should the OS not use the key? Because I want to use it. Because I'm making a shortcut that requires that key. Because this key is used only for one thing, And that's ridiculous. And because macOS has like 10 times better keyboard shortcuts just because it allows you to use this key. It should be that simple. All right. Um, no, let's make it out to do. Note, fuck Linux. Uh, Actually, you know what? If you can make this even simpler. Just don't use KDE or GNOME. Yeah, but then I have to decide, like, the other people using this editor, like... Is it if def? So I need in if and def. Alright. So, a little bit weird to have two switches. Well, I don't need to have two switches, actually. Essentially, for Linux, we won't have any of this. And it's just gonna handle it with the alt modifier instead. All OSs except Mac do it this way. Yeah, and they both suck for doing that. There is a super underutilized key, which is why I wanted to use it. And I haven't fully decided the rules of what's what, but the meta key controls what you're currently doing. The control key controls the execution of the program, right? So, um, it's supposed to be Command S saves the current buffer. Command arrow keys moves you left and right by one word. Which actually alt is going to handle that, so whatever. Control arrow keys creates a new buffer. Because to me that makes more sense. To have control controls the program, command controls what you're doing within the program. Alt controls this thing. That was my philosophy for this thing, you know? Control, program. Command, buffer. Alt, alternative buffer. This one. Ruined my plans, man. Ruined my fucking plans. I mean, not really. I can disable the usage of the meta key inside of my individual KDE. Then use it as I want. And then it'll work like I want it to. But for anyone else, they either have to do the exact setup or remap the keys. It's ridiculous. That is ridiculous. Oh my god. Well, I guess that's an excuse to add remapping as quickly as possible, but come on, Linux, come on. This means, by the way, that I mentioned earlier, the default key shortcuts and whatnot should be the ones that I like, because it's my program. But that doesn't really make a lot of sense anymore, because the ones that I like do not work. They will within my own operating system, which I'm moving away from the shit as soon as possible. Holy fuck. Oh my god. Linux, what the fuck, man? Anyway. Alright, so if I press Alt S, it doesn't do shit. Alt. Good. Alt S. It's not being pressed or something. I don't know what's happening. Okay, save key, save buffer. Okay. But now, home, braincode, brain.c, and save file, saved it. Okay. Save file, save key, but then nothing else happens. Because there is no current buffer anymore. In general, for me, meta key is reserved for DE or window manager. Meta S is split window in my case. Only used macOS rarely. I just find it a lot easier. That's a very annoying thing. I mean, obviously, you should control which keys you use for what. But the fact that my program is not even allowed to see that key being pressed feels ridiculous. Oh, hold on. I want to see something. Oh. That's kind of something I can do. My keyboard has a Windows or macOS mode. If I switch it to the other, I have it always on macOS mode because it acts like Linux. But if I switch it to Windows mode, I can use the meta key to save. At least I don't have to like do remapping because to be fair, I don't want to lose this thing, but I want to lose this thing, but I still lose it. I don't know. All right. Like I think I understand why I'm not saving a file. So let me do a test one more time. Brain.c. I go here. I make an edit. I go back to this buffer. And I save. No. Wait, which mapping am I on right now? Save. Save is not working anymore. Like the button is actively not working anymore. Alright, never mind. I broke even more. Try that one more time. Home D Braincode brain.c. Open the file. Cool. Go here, type into the file. Cool. Go here, Alt S. Saved the file. There we go. Okay. I understand the problem essentially is that I am treating this variable that I'm using to hold the current buffer as a previous buffer variable. And that's not correct. Maybe I should be enough to not reset it back to that. And in this condition, just do... No, where's the toggle? Here. If in command, close, otherwise... Okay, let me see. Home, the braincode, brain.c, I mean. Go here. It's time, let's do it properly. Hello world from brain. And save. And it saved. Okay. We're good. We can save files. Needs a little bit of work with, you know, scrolling, cursor, all that stuff when opening a file. For that matter, when I open a file that I don't have open, opens at the beginning. Okay, so maybe it doesn't even need that much work. I can just Where are we? Here. Put the cursor for this thing at 0. And then I believe I need to do... Do I need to do anything else here? Cursor color, offset, multi-line. That should be good. Home, the Braincode brain.c. Alright, close this thing. Hello. And save. And close. Doesn't close. Right, it's the only buffer I have open, so I can't really close it. I don't know if that crashed. I'm actually not sure what that did. I think that crashed. Alright, so it needs a little bit of stability, but it works. Oh, that was very, very painful. But at least we have a code editor that is capable of opening files. Editing them and saving them in a very basic manner. I'll need to do a lot of refinement over that, but it can do that, and it can open multiple buffers. And it can do so with what I believe to be intuitive, what is it called? Intuitive key bindings, although Linux doesn't like them, because I try to use the meta key. Is your concern that on Linux you can't properly detect the meta key? Pretty much, yes. Because it's only for the system. And I'm not even allowed to see that key. And the system is not using it properly, so it genuinely just gives me a key that is useless. That is the annoying part to me. Otherwise, I would use that key for command of the system. I mean, maybe I should just do that. Nah. Meta key to control the system. No computer technically has the meta key these days. That's not really the problem. No key is being pressed. I don't think it's just a different key. I mean, you know, it's worth checking. Is it reporting it as something else? That's what you're saying? Let's see every keystroke that we get. It detected it. The modifier 227. What is 227? If you could highlight. E3. That is the left meta. It found it then. Okay, so is the problem something else? Is the problem just the way that I'm handling the modifier? I think my logic for handling this is just weird. But, like, I am allowed to use it. And it is detecting it as 227, which is the correct value. It's just that, what the fuck am I doing here? Okay. That's not really the problem. Like the problem in my code here for handling the modifier is that I should be getting only the first byte, the first half byte of it. That gives me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I can map that to an 8-bit. Although it does mean that these need to be mapped to just these. Although that means that left control is always pressed because it's 0. Okay, I'm gonna have to look into this. But essentially, it's not the problem that I thought. If they can map it, so should you. Yeah, no, the problem turned out to be something completely different. Turns out. No. That's I can do this. I can do this. Okay, it's 1 over this and 1 over this. That's how you map them correctly. That is based on the modifier that I get only this part of it, which is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Remove those from here, although I'm going to keep a note. And then the correct check to do isn't really if it's equal, but more so, I'm going to create a new one. Bool is mod pressed with an int mod, and then return if the current modifier. No, there's like a built-in CTLZ for the current modifier. If that is equal to the mod. No, I don't need this actually. If mod, my God, what am I doing? Okay, that's how you do it. Okay. If the current modifier shifted by the mod is 1. Okay. So essentially what this does is activate a different bit when one of these 8 is modified. This specifies which bit. And then check if that bit is activated to see if the mod is pressed. So I need to change how these work. Can I make it include both? Let me see. It is literally the same plus 4. So do the same check, but with the right side of the key, which is just the same key plus 4. Otherwise, do this check. So should be able to handle control pretty well. True. I'm going to test it. Control. And control did not work. Did I do that check correctly? Double-sided, true. And the modifier is less than 4. It is 0. And the current modifier shifted by mod plus 4, which is 4, is 1, then return true. And 4 is right control. Wait. Yes. Okay, so I think that's not working. So just tell me that. Tell me the result of this operation, right? Pressed. Not pressed. Why don't you consider that to be pressed? It's hard to tell. There's a lot of prints happening at the same time. All right, here. 0, 0. So oh, what am I trying to do with this first? It's pressed. Cool. Then the modifier for it is cool, 4. So it's 1 shifted by 4. Oh, there it is. I think it was just a parentheses messing everything up. So when I added them, everything was good. Okay. Well, that cleans up my code a fair bit. And now let's see. Okay, so we have left control, left alt, and left meta. Get rid of that and that. Let's see. All right, I press alt, home, the Braincode brain.c. Cool. Exit this, go here, delete that, and I don't think that worked. No! So why did it not work this time? Two, 7. You ever finish my tiling window manager? I'm not gonna lie, I was... Wait. No, because what do you mean 2, 7? How is that the modifier? So it is just mapping to something weird. Control, 2, 4, 6, 7. That is the correct key. That is this. Which means bit. All right, show me the current modifier then. Sets to 3 because it's 0 for control, 1 to shift, 2 for alt, 3 for meta. So 0, 0, 0, 1, that is 8. All right, and if I do right meta, then I get 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1. So 8, 0. Okay, good. About the tiling window manager, I was thinking that maybe the logic used for this could help for that, but it really doesn't because it's already handled by the UI system. So not really, not yet. I haven't finished that. I haven't used one that much, so I'm not really all that familiar with a tiling window manager. Anyway, is the key being pressed then? I don't get why not. If the mod pressed, yeah, current modifier shifted by 3 and 1, the answer is yes. Current modifier shifted by mod equals this thing. I'm not even getting to the check. When I have the meta key pressed, I don't get key events at all. Jesus. Okay. Well, anyway, I had a bug in my that's stupid. I had a bug in the way that I was detecting modifiers, so good. But anyway, the note still stands. That is ridiculous. I have the damn key. Yeah, I know there used to be an actual key called the meta key. Now everyone's doing their own thing with it. Microsoft's doing a Copilot key nowadays, like... Unlock productivity with your... Like, I think it still maps to the... Sometimes it's the smallest changes that can make the biggest difference. The entire US economy is centered around AI nowadays, and a little bit of war. So, what do you mean the smallest changes? Also, stop pretending that AI is productive. Do I need to pull the... I'm in the wrong file again. I am in the wrong file again. Thanks to Zed. Again, this can happen. I can find myself making edits on 2 different versions of the same file, and then I won't be able to reconcile them properly. This is a huge fucking bug for Zed. Jesus. Well, what a disappointing stream it's been. I'm not gonna lie. I found out my plans to use the meta key are destroyed, and I have to use the alt key. And yeah, maybe I'll rework my philosophy then. Control is program control, and alt is content control, and meta is system control. Which in my OS you do use meta to control the system already. So, like, to open a new window with this. This is what I have in the tiling window manager right now. It creates just a full screen window. Meta alt. Then I'll open another window, meta alt again, switch between them. This is where Linux is gonna get a little bit fucky. Command arrow. Can't really see it because, you know, they look exactly the same, but if I move in one, well, let me open a demo. Or actually, what did I open? Open a game, okay, whatever. So yeah, one window's in a demo, in a game, the other one is here. I can move around with them. So it doesn't really do tiling in the sense that it resizes windows, because that's the part that I haven't really figured out how I want to work in my system, resizing windows. But yeah, I think probably the easiest thing for me to do is alt is going to be the key that handles the command buffer. So yeah, new key map binding philosophy. Alt controls what you're currently doing inside the program. Control controls the program. Command controls the system. And it also includes stuff like Command C, Command V. Because that's what my system uses. But for example, it's different on Linux, so it's not like I get to control that. Still waiting for the new code editor? I got you. It even has colors. Very carefully selected by just mashing my keyboard on the numpad. So, yeah. Turned out, actually, I like these colors. I was not expecting to like them, but I like them. Anyway, oh, did I... Right, I changed the key map. Now it's Command X to go into this buffer. Home, the Braincode, brain.c. And Command X to exit. Delete this thing. Now it's Alt S to save. I need to learn my new key maps. Although you should also be able to save from Control S. So both of these keys really will be handled if... Color contrast is weird. Again, literally, this is how I pick the colors. And then I was like, hold on, it's missing one number. That's one too many. There you go. That's the color. You know what? That's gonna be the cursor color. For both of them. Let's see what that looks like. It's too close to this one now, you can't really see it. Let's make it FF then. What about now? It's gonna be like redder. No, it's not. Is the cursor color not being applied properly? Because I think it's not being applied properly. It's... Well, hold on. It's not being applied. It's literally being hard-coded to... Hold on. Alpha, red, green, blue only has one F. So it was super wrong. Nice. There we go. Okay. Very weird colors. Now it's officially very weird. But again, that is how I pick these colors. Okay, well, that was productive. I have to say, well, yeah, it was a lot easier working on this code editor than the first one, but that's because I already had all the text editing done. So, um, yeah, that makes sense. All right. Now, time is it? 11:11. Well, I think it's time to work on a Lisp interpreter real quick. All right, so I made some changes to my Lisp interpreter, internal mostly, and my IR generator for Lisp is now very close to becoming the only IR generator inside my compiler. With literally, this is the only code that we need to generate IR. This and, of course, a properly formatted grammar. So, yeah, it's gonna replace this monstrosity. It's not even that bad. Like, if we count lines of code, it's what, 32 lines of code plus. I don't think this is even being helpful. This is like debugging stuff. So literally just 32 lines of code, but they're the worst 32 lines of code for a compiler IR generator that you can think of, compared to this very beautiful, easy to understand abstract syntax tree to intermediate representation code. Look at it. Get the next node. So far as we have a node, check it. Is it a token? If so, then register into the current context. We'll see the context later. Then, if we are before the current context or outside of the current context, then return. It is a recursive function. Then, if it's not a token, but it has semantic value, aka it has one of these tags, then this is the context that I was talking about. So create a new IR element based on that semantic rule. Recursively call this same function where the tokens will be registered and subrules will be registered. And finally, register it to its parent content. Then move on to the next node and continue. That's literally it. Maybe I could explain the logic a little bit more if you don't understand certain words that I used, but yeah. And by the way, what I mean by context is just an expression of some sort in the IR. Literally that simple. And this is the code for Lisp, where there's literally two kinds of, or three kinds of things that have a semantic value. The sexp, the S expression, the Lisp val, which I'm going to rename to atom, I just haven't bothered, and the actual values of an atom. That simple. Compared to the other IR generator, which I don't feel like going through this code, but essentially uses these same rules to traverse your code. So it has to have knowledge of what the code looks like in the first place, which is ridiculous. It doesn't need to do that. And it's like, okay, the first thing I expect is an expression. If you manage to parse your program correctly, you have an expression as the first thing. Okay, you do have an expression, and it's type 2, which means atom, the second option, essentially. All right, so now I expect to parse an atom. All right, I'm expecting to find an identifier. I found an identifier. That's the atom done. Cool. That's the expression done. Cool. I expect to find a chain. There is a chain. It just continues. It's shitty code. The fact that it needs to understand the language is limited as hell, actually, because it means that if I make a proper parser generator, I'll still need to keep track of what the language looks like. So if I compile this to a proper parser generator, I'll still need the semi-compiled version of this thing for this, which is awful. Compared to the other very simple rules, not necessary. Yo, what's up? Learning Emacs this week after 10 plus years, I'm assuming years, in the field. Was using Vim and NeoVim since 2018. Ooh, boy. I do not envy you. I'm just gonna put it like that. NeoVim I never enjoyed in terms of the philosophy behind it and in terms of the way that it works. Too much complexity, not enough usefulness. Emacs, very useful. Horrible complexity, more than NeoVim. Orders of magnitude more. Horrifying. That's what led me to making my own thing. Although we've moved on from that. And it's unfortunately not super ready to start working with it yet. But I don't know if I'm going to stream midweek, maybe. Maybe if the heat wave subsides a little bit. But I am going to be taking a break. So I should have enough time to like continue working on the editor and making it actually usable in its current form. And then, 2 weeks from now, I'm going to have a fully multi-threaded operating system and a code editor. We're ready. We're so ready to move away from Linux. It's crazy. Because fully multi-threaded operating system means file system in user space, which means distributed file system, which means I can make Linux do things from within my own OS. Although I need to build the infrastructure for that, like the actual Fuse Linux driver to do that, which is coming soon. Might be the topic of the next stream after this one. Might be doing Fuse development. Although I already have like a little layer around Fuse that allows me to do my own file system stuff. And yeah, not a whole lot of Fuse, but definitely Linux file system development to make it distributed. That might be what comes next. And then I'm done with Linux. Then I don't need Linux for anything besides gaming and streaming. NVIDIA drivers. You know how it is. Okay. Now. It is a bold move, but I'm hoping it works out. Because I'm tired of Linux jank. I'm tired of GNU jank. Zed is shooting itself in the foot, like actively. What the fuck was this editor doing today? I'm genuinely still confused by all the bugs I've been encountering just in the last 24 hours in this thing. Anyway, it's a little bit late, but I do want to look at what is going on currently in my Lisp interpreter, because that is one thing that I want my code editor to have. Right now it doesn't have it has a command buffer, but in that command buffer you can only open files. In reality, I want it to work that it actually uses commands, and you can have shortcuts to open files, for example, but it runs commands. Those shortcuts just run commands. So I'll need a Lisp interpreter for that. Now let's see. We have apply and the eval, the two fundamental functions upon which the universe is built. And add, to add numbers together, the only function that we currently have. No, not Windows. I'm talking about my own OS. Just relying on that, just doing development in that. All right, so apply can handle car expressions, which is getting the first element of a list. CDR expressions, which is getting every other element besides the first one. Cons, which takes two elements and puts them together. It just so happens that because of the way that my IR is structured, cons is just literally the expression that we take into the arguments. Atom, which returns true if something is an atomic expression. Essentially, the fuck did I do? An identifier, a string, or a number. There's other atoms, I believe, but that's what I have right now. Then EQ is missing. EQ is gonna be maybe I'm gonna implement EQ. Is something equal? That would be useful. Add, which is a built-in function. Although this is not how I should handle built-in functions, but I don't have an environment yet. I don't have variables, so I can't really have it like that. Lambdas are missing and labels are missing. And yeah, that's from apply, and then from eval, evaluating conditions is missing. Everything else is done. Okay, so that's what's missing from my Lisp right now. Equality operators, conditionals, which rely on the equality operators, and then lambdas, labels, and variables. Moving away from these AI nuts, going more low level, investing in fundamentals alongside C. This is exactly how I got here. Now I'm making my own code editor for my own operating system, for my own programming language, with my own Lisp interpreter. The only thing I haven't rebuilt is Git, although I did make a Git server type of thing from scratch, though it's just bash commands. Git is very, very useful already. You don't need to do a whole lot of setup. All right. The first thing I should begin with is the equality operator, because that one is going to be pretty easy. Right, so let's set up some tests for it. Okay, this is going to be a little bit cursed, but I don't have a semicolon as the comment in Lisp. So we're going to have to use C-style comments. My tokenizer needs a lot of work. Anyway, EQ of 1 and 1. Then EQ of true and true. I don't have a true, actually. That is missing. That is missing. Look at that. True and nil are missing. Forgot about you guys. Interesting. Okay, I'll add them. So for now, yeah, they're gone. Equality of strings and equality of expressions. Let's do a little bit of, is this commutative? This should be commutative, right? Said vomit emojis. You're correct about that, actually. I would have said, nah, Z is good. It's no longer good. Alright, so if I run this, probably going to have no response. It evaluated the 2s, and they resolved to a 3. And it has an atomic car expression EQ, but it doesn't really know what EQ does. So, time to implement it. Essentially, we check, is an expression equal to another expression? For that matter, we just take the arguments. So return, you need to return the true atom, actually. So you don't return a boolean, you return a code gen, which is IR, essentially. You return the equality of your own arguments. Now, what does this mean exactly? Because, oh, interesting. It's a recursive function. How does that work? No, I guess you need to have it implemented properly. So it's not a recursive function. It's a it's not a recursive function. All right, so we're gonna need to write some boilerplate. We're gonna have an S expression from the arguments. The S expression's car is gonna be operand A, Now, this is where I hope I don't struggle too much. The S expression's CDR is going to be another S expression where its car is the one that we're checking against. These cars are themselves CodeGen or IR items, but they are atoms. So we can do CodeGen A, CodeGen B. There's a little bit of boilerplate happening, so I'm not going to do an ad break. Also, it's pretty late. All right. First off, if the type of A is not equal to the type of B, or the type of A is not equal to the lisp value, which is the atom, return nil. Nil expression, which is just an empty CodeGen instance. If they are equal, then we need to get that lisp value from A code, let's say, and from B as well. And then we need to switch, not write switch code, on the type of atom that it is. Zed, populate this properly, because this it has struggled with. Okay, it did it correct. This is not C++, my dude. It mostly did it correctly, alright. Okay. What if they have no type? That's a thing to check. And it's true, of course. Wait, so... this is another thing I did wrong. There's another check I need to do. If the type of atom that this is not equal to the type of atom that this is, return a nil expression, right? If I'm comparing... well, no, really. In some cases, this can be okay. Okay, it's better if I make this thing like return a boolean. And then I make a CodeGen wrapper around that. Which essentially is going to call the other function, return equality atom with A and B. If so, you return true, otherwise you return nil. Alright, so just add that. Can even make it static inline. Call it from here. And now we can just return false, which is a lot easier. Alright, so if the value is nil, well, we want to check the B code type being also nil, then it's true. They're the same thing. In any other case, it is false. Yeah, so the comparison that I was doing was correct. All right, if the comparison that I'm doing is, for example, between nil and an identifier, that's not the same thing. We already know that. So if they're not the same thing, I already know that they're not equal. I can spare me this thing. So if A is nil, B is also nil, that's true. If A is true, B is also true, that's true. In case they're identifiers, we have to check if they match each other, which is just a little bit of a string slice match. Slices equal. Right, the slice of A code value and B code value, case insensitive. I wrote C code, not sure where I got that from. Same thing happens when they're strings. It just so happens that strings have, you know, the quotation marks in their own value, but they will match. It's just 2 more characters to check. If they're numbers, then we just do A code number equal to B code number. We only handle integers right now, but I guess that's fine. And is that all the boilerplate I need? Only one way to know. True, true, true. 1 and 1 are true. String and string are true. This and this is true. Okay, that's good. Now let's do some nil and true. Let's do add 1 and 2 and add 3 and 4. These should not match. STR and RTS. It's not like I'm doing a whole lot of testing here, but true, true, true. Nil, nil, nil. There we have it. For that matter, T is considered an identifier at this point. So, all right. So let's do conditions then. I'm gonna write a condition, which the way the conditions work in Lisp is you have a list of conditions where you have the thing to evaluate and what to do if it evaluates to true. It's going to go down this list until it finds one of those. So it's very common, for example, at the end of the list to find T and something to do, which is like, it is a switch pretty much. And T is the true atom, so true. This always evaluates to true because true is true. So it's a default in the switch. Anyway, we're going to return, let's see, if 1 and 3 are equal, we're going to return 1. If 3 and 3 are equal, we're going to return true, 2. And if T is true, then we're going to return 3. Except again, we don't have a true atom. So that one will have to wait. All right, this should compile, but it shouldn't work. Again, ignore the awkward C-style comments because my tokenizer is limited. I need to fix that. Again, since I'm taking a break, I have plenty of time to work on that. Now, conditional operator. It's written by the evcon function, which we actually do not have in my references, but it is here. Apply eval evcon. Okay, here it is. All right, that is the code for evcon. I'm assuming it's going to return a code gen evcon, or it's going to take an expression and arguments. And we're going to look at how it works in a second. But before I get to it, yes. Okay. The expression in this case is going to be this whole thing. Everything after the car that we just checked. So code car, we're going to pass to it evcon code cdr with arguments none. These aren't arguments, it's an environment. I'm not sure what A stands for here, but it is, you know, like environment variables and whatnot, which is all types of variables in Lisp, which we're going to have be more global, although it's stack-based and we don't have yet, so we're going to skip them. All right, so we only have the expression. What we do is we evaluate CAAR against A, and if it matches, then... Hold on, what? If it matches? Oh yeah, then run... Okay, yeah. Okay, so we're now working with this expression, this alone. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the first element of the first element. The first element is this one. The first element of that is this one. So we're going to take the equal, the condition, and we're going to evaluate it. If it evaluates to true, then we know that you know, this condition was true. And in that case, we are going to get CADAR of C, which means with this expression, first element, second onward, which is this one, but it gives it to us as a list, so we get the first element of that. All right. We might genuinely have enough elements to write this thing in Lisp. In, you know, my Lisp. Yeah, let's give it a try. All right. So we're going to check the first condition. Which we get by doing car. Not really, because I never did this thing as its own functions, so I can do that. All right, we're starting to get to levels of already kind of, not really metaprogram, not really like self-hosting, I mean. More so kind of metaprogramming. Because the evaluation is being done by Lisp itself. We evaluate car of the condition, and eval that whole thing if the condition we can do a boolean for this one is true, which we need to base it off of the type of the expression that this is. In case it's an S expression, or default, which is an atom. No, that's not right. Semantic rule S expression. we're going to get the S expression code. And if it has a CDR, well, we're going to get its car. We're actually just going to evaluate that, actually. Yeah. Return is true code car. Otherwise, we're going to get the Lisp value code of this thing. Expression pointer. And L code type equals to car true. That's our condition. Now it does want brackets, so we'll give it brackets. And now we have an is true. So if this whole thing is true, which I do have to admit it looks kind of crazy, but it works. I hope so anyway. Then we will return the evaluation of the car CDR car of the expression. Otherwise, in any other case, we're going to recursively call evcon with the CDR of our expression. evcon. I'm scared to try this, because we're getting to levels of recursion that I have not hit yet with my Lisp interpreter, but yeah, I don't think that worked. Atomic car expression cond. Handle cond case. This was being called. Okay. So I'm calling the function. I'm checking this whole thing. I'm checking this whole thing. One of those has got to be hit. How is it possible that they're not? How is it possible that they're not? The program is actively exiting. That means it's working. It's not doing an infinite loop. It's just being weird. Because neither of these is printing? And there's no way to interrupt the program? No, what is happening? Like, actually, what is happening? Alright. Is this being hit? No. I must have done something horribly, horribly wrong for this to happen. These can return nil. But like, that should propagate. I am so confused right now. Okay, I'm going to attempt something. Y luego me voy a cagar en sus putos muertos, because it's not gonna work. No executable specified. Really now? Yeah, I guess you're right about that. The name of my executable is, in fact, well, there's rulegen and then there's cred. Okay, cred.elf. Run, I believe this is to start the program in a stopped state. Ex run cred.elf. I forgot GDB. So it's not that. Is it this one? It's not a core dump. Okay, so that's not the correct. GDB start program in stop state. There's a key for that, which I'm not gonna find. Isn't there a command line argument to tell GDB to stop at the first? At the first argument, as the first at the beginning of the function. I think I do need to do. My God, it requires so much setup. What was it? Start. File cred.elf. Then run cred.elf. Oh my God, it's not cred.elf, it's just cred. GDB. For the love of God, GNU, hire people that know how to use a computer. This shit is ridiculous. It's so unintuitive. My God. No, what breakpoint to what? Okay. Imaginal.c, no such file or directory. So that's really old. That is also not the correct command. File cred.elf. Start. Okay, I think that's correct. Now, I want to do breakpoint on evcon. Continue. We've hit evcon. All right. TUI enable. No source available. You're useless. TUI disable. So I don't have this thing compiled with this. Let's do that all over again. File cred.elf. Start. Set a breakpoint at evcon. Continue. You've hit your breakpoint. Finally. TUI enable. Finally. Next. Is it step into? No. Finish this function. Step. Finish this function. step, next, segmentation fault. I'm losing it. So this entire time, my program was quitting because of segmentation fault, and I was not being told. Which, by the way, is because there's one too many of these. That is insane. What do you mean? Okay. That seems to be working better. Atomic car expression EQ. Atomic expression. You are comparing two numbers. Is true. Right, because you're just comparing. They're not. They're not equal. So I think the program just seg-faulted again, didn't it? Oh my god. Linux, GNU, some UX designers, someone who knows what the fuck they're doing, someone who has used a computer before, for the love of God, someone who has coded a computer before. What do you mean my program is silently crashing? And it's indistinguishable. Absolutely, completely indistinguishable from it exiting correctly. What do you mean? That might be my build system, but when it crashes, it usually tells me where it crashed. Okay. Okay. We're moving forward. My god, this is ridiculous. This is a ridiculous fucking everything. Everything's so ridiculous. The debugger, the code editor, the operating system, the meta key. Everything is so frustrating to use, I swear to god. Okay, so it's checking the first condition, right? This versus this, 1 and 3, they're not the same, makes sense. So it's running another condition. And guess what? Silently crashing. Okay. Well, this is gonna need some work. That is ridiculous. The absolute state of it all. My program silent crash. That's a new one for me. Again, maybe it's my build system, but it has actively shown me when stuff crashes. So why does it not do that anymore? Maybe it's something that I configured wrong? I don't know. It could be that. It's like I wrote it when I was very much getting started with Lisp. Might not be the best code out there. But it is nice to look at. So anyway. I really need to figure out what the deal is with cars in my system. And my last name is Ferrari, look at that. I don't have that figured out. That's fucking ironic. Anyway. I just need to figure out exactly what it is about this. Let me try one more time. Yeah, it eventually evals a null error. That makes sense, but at least it doesn't crash. I think. I'm not sure. All right. Yeah, I'll have to figure this out. Again, I'm not even entirely sure on how the system is properly handling cars and CDRs with the correct levels of recursion, as opposed to how Lisp defines them. So that's not really helpful. There are a few places in which it has seemed inconsistent in the way that it works. This kind of is one of them, but it might just be me. It might just be me. Wait, no, hold on. Well, no, it is still crashing. All right, show me where you're crashing real quick. 207. And it's crashing because it doesn't have a car. Meaning it is an atomic expression. Well, I'm not sure. It evaluated a condition. It did the EQ. Checked if it's true. Resulted in being false. Tried a second time. And the second time, what did it evaluate? Well, I can print that. Hold on. Okay, I'm not done. I'm not done. I'm not out of the race yet. I can do a debug print of what I'm passing into this thing. Just one. This thing. Wait, so am I only passing this condition? All right, do that again. Evaluate the entire condition now. Or print the entire condition for me. It's this whole thing. So CDR, I don't know what the hell you're doing. This is the entire condition. Open, 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 open. 1, 2, 3. It's the entire thing. Nah, that's even worse. Alright, I'll need to figure this out. Okay, I am out of the race for now. Alright. Thank you so much, everybody, but I definitely need to figure out what I'm doing with these cars and CDRs. Although, I have to say, it's definitely a lot easier to figure out the logic of what I'm doing with this. Though it may not be correct. And most importantly, it may not be super performant. Maybe it's better to evaluate the conditions properly? Who knows? Yeah, probably. Probably the best thing to do. Anyway, that is enough for today. Possibilities of a midweek stream. Low, but not zero. Because I do want to take a break, but I am already taking a break on the weekend. Low, but not zero. And it will be more code editor stuff and more Lisp stuff. I will add variables to Lisp finally after having figured this out. Variables and lambdas and labels are pretty much the last thing left to figure out on Lisp. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. I will see you then.